Wooclap educational webinar around interactive and active learning. My name is Christopher Pinjon. I'm a former French teacher and a former also learning technologist in higher ed, and I'll be your host also for today. And I work as Wooclap as part of the learning success team, where my role is to support educators and institutions as well, and to get the most value from our educational tools, Wooclap and Wooclap. Now, so for those who joined our educational webinars before, you know that we aim to make these sessions as interactive as possible. And no surprise here, but we're going to use also Wooclap for this little webinar. So I'll let you connect to the event. There you are. Just in case, if it's the first time that you use Wooclap, where you have different ways to connect to an event. You can use your smartphone and scan the QR code. You can also go to wooclap.com and enter also the code of the event, which is beyond MCQ. Or you can also click on the URL that my colleagues have probably shared in the chat. Or, yeah, thanks, Elisa. Perfect. Thanks very much. Perfect. Just going to wait maybe a few more seconds before launching with the first question. We're expecting a lot of people today. A lot of people. So thanks again for joining us. And don't hesitate yet to say hi if you like in the chat. Hi, Christina. Hello, Inanda. Hi, Kieran. Buongiorno, Martino. Buonasera. Okay, well, let's go with the first question up. Curious to know, so where you're actually joining us from today. So, and as you can see, it's not an MCQ question. We actually decided to go with a different question type. That's all kind of the main topic also of today's session. And curious, yeah. So we actually use this find on image question. So here, you can use those questions, in different ways. I use it here to break the ice in some ways. But you can also use for various pedagogical purposes, of course. And it's thanks. Okay, very curious to see a lot of Europeans. It would be hard here to know exactly where, but I can see that it's some are pretty much the west part of Europe. A lot of colleagues in Europe, and some in the States and in Canada, great, and in Quebec, great. And colleague also in South Africa. I haven't actually brushed up on my geography here, so don't want to make any any bad things here. But yeah, great, perfect. Don't hesitate also if you want to say, to precise it. Oh yeah, well, I think that some of you have already done it, but yeah, don't hesitate to say hi in the chat and just where you are from. Exactly, yeah. And some from Ecuador, Lebanon, great. Algeria as well, thanks. Oh, well, very international crowd for this little international. It's international, actually, yeah. A nice session. That's great. Great to see this. Thanks, and thanks for sharing this. Okay, so yeah, briefly, quick information about the format. So we're going to have a 55-minute conversational session around interactive learning activities. And we have also dedicated 10 minutes, for the Q&A at the end of the session. But again, don't hesitate to ask your questions throughout the session and use the dedicated question tab at the bottom right-hand corner. So it's easier also for us, or with the colleagues, Elisa, Fabrizia, Kieran as well, and Matthew, to answer them. So it's way easier. So you can see, two different question types, the chat that some of you have already noticed, and next to it, the question tab. So if you have any questions, feel free to use this one. And lastly, yeah, as always, the webinar will be recorded and you will receive the replay by email, along with some also educational resources that we'll discuss today. Okay, so let's dive into why we're all here. And again, unsurprisingly, yeah, multiple choice questions are among the most used question types that we mentioned here. Yeah, there we are. Yeah, so multiple choice questions, are among the most used question types in Wooclap and possibly also in other educational tools, in other LMSs, because they serve as a common way to assess learners' understanding. However, we know that they can also fall short in measuring, critical thinkings, and may not also account for diverse, pedagogical approaches and learning styles. So that's why, our goal is to move beyond the MCQ and explore some practical, diverse strategies for interactive learning. And to talk about this topic here, and to address this topic, I'm very pleased to be with Dr. Robyn Pritzker, learning technologist advisor from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. Hi, Robyn.
Hi. I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Oh, good. Oh, good. Really well. I'm looking forward to have this little conversation on this important topic also.
Yes, me too.
So let's actually kick off the session with a question that Robyn and I actually wanted to ask you, and we were also going to adjust in a minute. In your own institutions, also in your own teaching, if you had one word here to use, what would be the biggest challenge that you currently face? Whether it is in your teaching or maybe in your supporting role today, if you are a learning technologist or a similar empathy. Okay, attention, grabbing attention possibly. Yeah. Okay, hold on. So as you can see, we're using a word cloud, and the word cloud is being kind of created through with all the different answers that you're sharing. So we can see that most of you are showing that attention is one of the biggest challenge that you're facing. Engagement as well. So lack of time, navigation, interest. Yeah. Student speaking. Let's see. If we change now to some talking about artificial intelligence. Get students to speak, to interact with them. Engagement again. Yeah. We'll see. Interesting. Grading as well. Yeah. No. Yeah. It takes a lot of time for sure. Disengagement. Okay. Yeah. So attention and engagement. Okay. Well, let's keep it as is. And those would be the biggest challenges that you're currently facing, which is very interesting and actually comes pretty much to what also we've noticed with Robyn. And I'm going to ask you also this question to you, Robyn, so we can then kick off, officially this little session with the first question that I wanted to ask you is, what are the main challenges that you see at the University of Edinburgh, that teachers face in their teaching activities today, and how do you go about identifying them?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for having me. So I don't think anyone will be surprised to hear that time and workload pressures are far and away the top challenge that we hear about from our colleagues. So especially here in the UK, a lot of institutions are facing, to put it very lightly, increased pressures of all sorts, financial pressures, amongst others. This is exacerbating things for an already very overworked community. I was an academic for a long time at the university before moving into professional services. So I've been able to kind of see both sides of how things have been over the last few years, and balancing pedagogy and technology with all of these stressors. This is a conversation we tend to see a lot in the teams that we work with. So on top of the general decision fatigue and regular fatigue, so we're talking to people about which tools to use and how to use them. Faculty and administrators have very little capacity at the moment for exploring new platforms and experimenting with new techniques, especially if they've been teaching a course in the same way for years. Efficiency is really all people have time for at the moment, at least the people that we're talking to. And conversations around AI are really hitting this mark as well. There are a lot of people who know they probably might need to be more informed or have policies sorted out who do not have time to really do that work. And that's not to say that there's no interest or desire to do those things, especially around those tools that might eventually alleviate some of those pressures. But a lot of the discourse in our space is around the fact that nobody feels like they even have room to try new things out, given how little space there is for anything outside of the norm or the status quo. Not to mention, I think for a lot of the more meaningful changes to coursework, faculty might need to check with or be approved by boards of study who have a lot of rigorous policies, and a lot of those are good and ensure fairness, but it means that we sometimes have to sacrifice a bit of that flexibility. So one other thing I found particularly interesting recently from colleagues is the sense of the diminishing returns with regards to the efficacy of like those traditional lectures. I think we were seeing a lot of those in the word clouds as like student engagement. Student disengagement is quite a high level. Student engagement is maybe not at a very high level either, but especially in, I think, the bigger survey style courses, it might be different depending on the institution. If you have really small class sizes, you might have more room for these kinds of things, but students tend to now have a clear sense that they do not actually have to be in the room to hear the lecture. We're all aware of this, and acquisition style learning is kind of changing every day. We're all trying to find ways to address the needs of both instructors and learners, and that can be kind of a fine line to walk. And so for the most part, we do not struggle to identify areas where we might need to be providing more support. It's pretty clear to us what people are struggling with. We receive help calls on the more technical side of things, but we also get a lot of learning design-based questions. So I work in the educational design and engagement section of the Learning, Teaching, and Web Directorate, which means I kind of have eyes on all the technical things happening, but my job is really to think about design and practice. So when we lead trainings about these sorts of things, we chat to all of our participants to get a sense of what people are looking for. We can infer some things from what they focus on in the sessions, but also what we've been finding is that which trainings people are not attending is also telling us a lot. So we spend time in user groups and have good outreach systems. But I think a lot of our more technical colleagues are working so hard to kind of keep up with changes that we have to work very collaboratively to make sure that we're kind of covering all of our bases to support people.
Yeah, and completely agree. And this is also something that we share also that other colleagues, from other universities we worked with, where it was mentioned in the word cloud, student disengagement and time also. These are kind of the challenges that we see again and again and again, and it really also highlights why our next topic is so important. Getting students to participate also in a way, and what we've been talking about is really turning them from passive listeners into active participants also, and which moves on to this second question we wanted to ask you is, how did you as the learning innovation team at the university determine that interactive response systems, so the so-called IRS, were some the solutions to the challenges faced by teachers, and how did Wooclap also come into the picture here?
Yeah, thanks. Our team has spent a really long time prioritizing accessibility, but also flexibility and universal design. So we've used a number of different platforms over the years, including a couple of IRS, but we've always really appreciated that mode because it offers a super simple point of transition for instructors who are hoping to incorporate more engagement-based content into their teaching material. So for example, a lot of people might start using an IRS for 1 or 2 questions here and there, or even sometimes as like a sidestep method of attendance tracking, instead of say designing an entire lecture or class on the platform. And that's great for us because it gives us a jumping off point where people are familiar with the platform and can integrate it well into their class time. But then we are able to identify key moments here and there where interactive responses would enhance whatever else they're already doing. That's a lot easier than asking someone to move a completely analog traditional lecture onto an entirely new platform or system. So for us, these targeted moments tend to be the best way to address some of those challenges we were talking about. We can find intervention points to focus on the immediate conveniences of a new tool. And then we can reinforce that as time goes on by explaining the ongoing pedagogical advantages of each of those slight shifts. So step by step is sort of how we consider all of that. That's our perspective as a department on using any kind of response systems in a general sense. And then in terms of Wooclap, this was a huge priority of our former senior manager, Wesley, who's now retired, and also my colleague, Alan, who's away traveling for several weeks, which is why he's not here with us. It's very exciting for him. But the general overview is in the academic year 2021-22, we ran a polling service replacement project. So we worked with our users to establish functional requirements, so we could then carry out some market research to determine the optimal features of any new tool we decided to use. One of the main questions that we had around new options was finding something that would be very easy to pick up and use with little training. As our last tool took a little bit of orientation and it kind of impacted usage in a negative way. It resulted in quite a few support calls, which is fine, but Wooclap's ease of access is built in, and both we and our users found things pretty immediately intuitive, which then led to an almost immediate significant increase of usage compared to the previous tool. So the Wooclap service is pretty self-supporting. That's been a huge benefit to our team. We have hardly any support calls ever. Most questions are about design and sort of increasing use, which is great. And our guidance and training tends to be well attended and well used. So the decision was pretty unanimous.
Okay. Well, glad to hear it. That, it makes also my job a little bit less stressful as well.
Yeah.
I'm not accommodating to both of us as well, so we can focus also on some other educational projects. So that's it's good to hear. And when you just when we talk about this shift to interactive teaching and the fact that the university starting to go with iOS systems, how and yeah, well, especially now, once you chose, Wooclap, how did you go about deploying it? How would you do you have any tips maybe for encouraging faculty adoption? If you have some other universities here who would be interesting, and also if you had to tackle these kind of profile, but do you have maybe some teachers who may be willing to using digital tools? What are the tips?
Yeah, our directorate has some standard practice for when we implement any new platform or even upgrade a platform. So we were rolling out Wooclap around the same time we were finalizing our upgrade to Learn Ultra, which was a huge project. And what we tend to focus on, I think I mentioned before, is emphasizing flexibility, accessibility, and simplicity. I think for all of us, we were really hoping to strike a happy medium between being able to collect user data and also continuing to do meaningful engagement through training and user groups. So we really want to meet people where they are. We don't want to have a set expectation for where people need to be with using a new tool. We want to prioritize wherever possible, people's just ability to access course materials in whatever ways is easiest. So we had a large push for engagement when we deployed the platform, as well as a couple of interns who helped us migrate some content ahead of the 2023-24 academic year. We have a lot of interns. I think I'll maybe be able to talk more about it later, but we did design 3 different training sessions, an orientation session for those who might have used any IRS before, an introductory session for those who are brand new to voting systems or any kind of response systems for teaching, and then our more pedagogically oriented session on interaction and engagement. And that's where we focus on showing people specifically how to move beyond MCQs. So that's the whole topic of that training. We also built and now maintain our SharePoint where users can find information and self-paced resources, particularly on how and why to use different question types. And then we do have some try yourself sessions that allow people to go through and experience different question types. and just getting some experience with some of the different formats. Some of those questions are very silly. I think we talked before, some of them are about biscuits and things like that, but it does, it makes it very clear how easy to use some of the less common question types are. We noticed about a 30% rise in usage in the first term that Wooclap was available compared to the stats from the same window in the previous year. We're still seeing pretty notable growth year on year and term on term, in especially the most critical weeks of our teaching periods. So like weeks 2 to 4, especially. In terms of tips, we always just really try to focus on user community and resource creation in as many different formats as possible for ease. We try to bring our information to a lot of different user groups and committees. We attend conferences and events where we can do practice sharing, which has been really wonderful. And then we also have a network of representatives from our central information services who meet monthly with contacts from all of our schools and deaneries. And so we can promote and share information about Wooclap and what everyone else is doing in those spaces. So mainly just relationship building, listening to what people need and trying to meaningfully respond to that. It sounds so obvious, and I know that's what we all hope we're doing all the time. But really keeping that at the center of all the decision-making processes has been helpful for us. Another practical thing, I really recommend focusing on capturing the exact kind of user data that works for your team. We run a pretty comprehensive user data analysis every month. And for a while we did weekly stats to see where things are at. We've been able to track which areas in our institution are using Wooclap most and in which ways, and that's really intriguing. I know that's not going to be possible for every team. It's only barely possible in our team. But I think finding the exact type of data that you need and then focusing on that and then bringing that back to users, I think that's something that we've found quite useful.
Yeah. Thanks again. Yeah, thanks, Robyn, sorry, for these tips. I particularly like the this idea, what you were saying, using the self-paced session to try all the different question types, and have also, and run those workshops also to encourage also those teachers also in at the same time, discovering, those interactive, digital tools and Wooclap, but also how they can also integrate those interactive questions within their teaching practice, and how they can also meet, those courses, learning, objectives, which kind of bring us also to that diversity of activity, which is also the heart of that discussion also today. So I'm going to ask you straight away, what in the you mentioned it quickly here, but when moving, beyond the standard MCQ, what pedagogical goals are you trying to achieve? And you as a teacher also use as a part of the learning, technology team to support also the teachers. Could you also give us an example of how you match a specific Wooclap question to a particular learning objective here?
Yes. So the number one point that I tend to make to people about MCQ weaknesses, and I don't think this will surprise anyone either, is that MCQs are inherently focused on recall or even reasoned guessing of curriculum content and not on learner development, which is always going to be extremely limiting. So MCQs are great for helping students to remember some information that they'll need to build upon later, but they are much less useful for fostering any kind of critical thinking or practicing more complex kinds of knowledge application. So what we usually try to do in our learning design work is remind people we are not just teaching students content, decentering the granular curriculum just a little bit, and instead enhancing focus on creating a robust learning environment is a very impactful shift. We are teaching students how to become independent critical thinkers who can move forward with their own further research, analysis, and self-driven projects the whole rest of their lives and their careers. We're preparing them for being an active community member and ideally a professional of some sort as well. So these are the kinds of principles that we try to emphasize in any pedagogical conversation we have. So to that end, we do have a few obvious ways that we can help people reframe teaching beyond the MCQs. So within Wooclap, you can use word clouds or open question styles as icebreakers or to gather feedback. We've already kind of done that. Moving from a more didactic monologue style towards discursive dialogue, brainstorming activities can be used to support collaborative learning or peer learning. I'll come back to that in a second. And Find on Image offers a host of options for visual learning activities. Competition mode gives you gamification. And of course, you can always still use MCQs or closed-ended questions in order to assess student understanding. But here is a great example of a question beyond the MCQ that's been shared within our institutional templates. So just to read it out, what do you think are the most important elements of a good academic presentation? For example, volume, topic, visual content, etc. So you have a couple categories here that you can put your thoughts into. So content, argument, structure, delivery and presentation skills, design and visual aids, or you can add your own category. So even if we just take one framework and we consider Diana Lorelai's learning types, so that's acquisition, collaboration, investigation, practice, discussion, and production, we know MCQs really only ever address acquisition. So that's one of them. So this example that you can see here intervenes at least in collaboration and discussion. And depending on how the activity is framed, you could branch out even further. So another one here, a question from a shared template that we have that helps people measure and evaluate their own learning. So this is from a very specific type of course. How do you feel about supervising a trainee at the start of this course? So this allows for a follow-up question afterwards to track any changes in sentiment from learners. This is a very simple method of increasing engagement and allowing discussion and investigation and collaboration. Again, depending on how you use these questions in the classroom, you could attack almost any of those learning types. So I think the thing to emphasize is that you have a flexibility here to match anything you want to do with almost any learning type. You just have to be a bit creative and open yourself up to kind of the innovative possibilities and what a question means, not to be too abstract, but we've done a lot of work in our team to identify where in our institution we have a really good breadth and diversity of learning types. We've spent years trying to find the right times and places to help support people trying to find like more radical ways of teaching. I have a very specific background that helps me focus on the radical and compassionate pedagogies. That's kind of where my other research is. And designing us into a curriculum and learning environment with as many moments of student agency as possible. When we run our accessibility audits across our whole institution every summer, we tend to ask our interns that come and work with us about their experiences. So we have a lot of anecdotal evidence from them. We get them involved in course creation. We generally are always doing things that are collaborative. And so we tend to kind of just try to walk our talk. We have a playful learning expert on our team. We have a lot of open educational resources. We're very determined to support and foster learning technologies that help everyone on both the learning and teaching side. So helping people move towards flexible question types and kind of address specific learning outcomes or goals is just a bit of a microcosm of all of the other work that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, but definitely a good, it's being a French language teacher before, for sure, it's a great way to force discussion and collaboration, even in all kinds of subject fields, for sure. And as you say, moving beyond acquisition, as you noted, using Diana's research and those 6 learning types. Just curious to know, do you also use the ABC learning design to support academics at the university?
Yes. So we've been, first of all, running ABC sessions for many years. We actually ran so many that we just moved into train the trainer sessions so that people could come and learn how to run an ABC session and then could take that back and apply it to their localized area. We have used some of the outcomes from the huge number of those sessions that we ran to put together a bunch of additional resources with micro patterns and macro patterns for teaching and learning. So a micro pattern would be basically like puzzle pieces that you can fit together with different of some of these learning types that you see here that you could effectively like Lego block together to put together a particular class, and then the macro patterns kind of zoom out and track those across the whole semester. So you would be able to see at a zoomed out level how many of each of these learning types you have. So we have a bunch of resources for people to do that on their own. We have provided the resources to run the sessions ourselves. And we also bring some ABC principles into our course design and redesign program, the ELDR, the Edinburgh Learning Design Roadmap, where we have people come in for 2 days in person and either create a new or redesign an existing program, from the like very outset principles of that program all the way through to the granular courses. So we do a lot of this work in a lot of different ways.
Okay, yeah, that's also something that we've actually recently worked on, and worked on this framework to map out, how to integrate, those educational tools across those 6, learning types. So let me see if I can share this here. Yeah. So I don't know if don't hesitate to tell us also in the chat if you're familiar with this with the ABC framework here. But we are going to share with you this educational guide that we recently actually designed together with a few universities here, which helps you, as you just said, Robyn, talking about going through all those different learning styles, and then with all the different cards, we mapped it out with the different question types that teachers can actually use, with some examples on how to tackle, to address some of those learning styles. So you mentioned also collaboration and so on, and you mentioned some of those active interactive questions that you can find also in Wooclap and in other educational tools as well. But as you can see here, so that's something that we're going to share at the end of this session. So if you are interested, in looking into, but I'm curious to know also, if you are using this kind of framework also within your university, also just for yourself, to help you design also your courses. But it's very useful there, just to very useful framework here to and to encourage also ourselves and teachers to go beyond this basic MCQ and just stick to the acquisition kind of learning style here. Obviously, as you mentioned, there are tons of different teaching practices that we can do. So and so that's one of the frameworks. But of course, there are different educational approaches. But very interesting, to launch these kind of practices within the course, as you said. Coming back to a presentation here, and this is just a little summary of what you can find also on Wooclap here. As you can see, as you said, there are over 15 different types of activities or functionalities that you can actually use within the platform to help you diversify your learning activities. Something that we I don't know if we've mentioned it already, but it's also a good way also to maintain students' attention as well. When we talked about at the very beginning, how to engage with our participants, and maintain also their attention. One of the ways is to diversify those interactive questions. Obviously, if you kind of stick to 20 different MCQ questions, you get bored at the end of the course. And as you can see here, so you have different question types, different interactive activities that you can use, and that we encourage also teachers to use here for different purposes. And coming back to what I want to come back to the learning styles, but you can use some of them to assess to assess understanding, some to gather feedback. If you want to launch also a debate, so in trying to move from being this monologue and having a dialogue with your students, actually interact also with them and through all the different interactive questions, and foster some different teaching practices, as you said, Robyn, focusing on the collaborative sides, peer learning side of things, just letting again that you can also, there are also some other functionalities that you can use within the tool to foster the gamified approach or experience that you want. If you're interested in the competition mode, you can also share your events with other colleagues. The collaborative aspect of the tool also here is a very important topic that we raised here with the product team as well. Having this opportunity to reuse also teaching resources that we all created, so we can then share them as templates, so other colleagues can also use in class and change and adapt it to what they teach, or adapt it to their learning objectives here. So yeah, just a little summary here of what all the different interactive questions that you can use when you integrate Wooclap within your teaching practice here. Okay, just coming back to a practical challenge, of question design. How do you encourage faculty in designing questions that foster this higher order thinking that you mentioned, such as analysis and evaluation, rather than just this knowledge recall and this acquisition, kind of learning style that we talked about?
We have a whole training session for this topic. As I mentioned before, we call it in-class polling for student interaction and engagement. The whole purpose of the training is to directly show people some traditional multiple choice questions, and then give them a framework for how to transition those to more analytic or evaluative lens of questioning. We use a couple of examples of good practice in this area from faculty, so existing questions, but I think a really straightforward one that I love is, what is your understanding of the term academic literacy? So there are a couple of things going on here. First of all, you could have easily used a multiple choice question for this. You could have had sort of 4 options of a definition and picked the best one. But even just simply turning the question inside out allows people to create their own interpretations. You open things very simply and very meaningfully. Second, I always want to note to people that the content of this question is as important as the style of the question. So this would be an appropriate question to ask students in a really diverse range of courses, regardless of their subject area. And that's something that moves us away from mere recall and into those higher order modes of thinking. So as I mentioned earlier, when you move the focus away from really specific fixation on curriculum points, where possible, sometimes there's things you do need to address, but when you're able to move towards the actual learning environment, we allow room for students to safely explore critical thinking skills and analysis. So many people were mentioning that getting students to speak up in class or engage in any kind of dialogue is a real difficulty. Completely understand that. I know that feeling for sure. But for example, in a question like this, you'd be able to kind of ask them to interrogate the meaning of the terms, the intention of the question, whether or not they've been given enough information to answer. And in this engagement training, we always encourage people to remember that learners are in community with instructors and with each other, not in competition or opposition, unless you're in competition mode, which is very specific. But also, as I'm sure we're all aware, the room left for anonymity in answering questions like this provides a bit of a digital safety net, and that can be a lot easier for students than just speaking up. So instead of raising your hand and needing to be put on the spot, being able to answer in this way, it gives you a bit of an extra confidence boost, I would say. So a further example that we tend to give in our training is around peer instruction. So asking perhaps a multiple choice question or using a poll, but doing it in 2 parts. So the first time to set a baseline for class understanding, and the second time after allowing about a 5-minute discussion amongst the class so people can discuss their answers. So these screenshots that you see are from a past IRS, but the principle remains really good. So the instructor here has asked a relatively complex physics-based question and then took responses before, on the top there, and then after on the bottom, after discussion analysis. And we can see how many more people got the question right the second time around. So that's another excellent example. And then some more synthesis and application. This is maybe a deceptively simple question. So higher education right now is in a bit of a what are we doing here moment. And any time that we can ask students to consider and reflect upon what they want to achieve and what meaning they want to make in undertaking their studies can be really important. So all of that apathy and lack of engagement and kind of general malaise that we're all experiencing. I don't know what more analytical questions we could pose than ones like these that kind of let us synthesize all the information we have that has led us to whatever moment we're in. And no matter how respondents answer this question, it gives us a really good opportunity to use the replies as a starting point for further conversation and engagement on a really personal and interactive level. And I think that's all we can really hope for at this point. Some of my other favorite higher order style questions are around moments of reflexivity. So asking students why the Gothic mode has been so influential in a literature class, and then asking people in a philosophy class where we might see examples of nihilism on social media, things like that, that lead to further discussion, to remind us all in a class that it's not just an opinion that students do better and have better outcomes when they feel personally connected to the material they're working with. It's a pretty well-established fact. So we just try to find ways to provide opportunities to make those connections.
Yeah. These are really good, really good examples, how a simple shift, in question design can actually prompt, deeper reflection. Funny, yeah, thanks for everyone for kind of answering those different questions. Those are the kind of examples, but it's nice to see that you're
I appreciate it.
answering those questions. As you pointed out, since the goal is also student outcome, I'm curious, how has been the response from students here?
Yeah, I'm very happy to be honest about the fact that we don't have as much specific student data as we would like to at this point. Qualitative data, we have plenty of quantitative data, but it's something we're looking at doing in the future. So practice sharing is really important to us, and it always has been. And we're pretty good usually at including learners in constructing their own education. Like I mentioned, the interns that we have working with us every summer, that's an award-winning internship program, and the bulk of that work is basically asking the interns what they want and need as students, and then finding ways to kind of constructively make those things happen. We know anecdotally that means that a lot of students do really enjoy the increased engagement in classes where Wooclap is incorporated. Not a huge surprise, as the alternative is typically like a 50-minute long traditional lecture. We know that's not really working the way it used to. We only have as much resourcing as we have, and we're balancing our need to kind of deliver the service with our desire to do more qualitative work. But I would always love to hear from anyone who has done this really successfully, and like how you did that and how it went for you. So that's something that we would love to be chatting with people about. What we do have is a lot of user data that shows us how consistent Wooclap usage is. So I mentioned our 30% increase in usage in just the first term after Wooclap rollout. But we have also had an increase of 73,000 responses between semester one of the 2024-25 academic year and semester one of the previous year. And on top of that, this year, we've already had an increase of almost 41,000 responses on top of last year's numbers just between August and October. So we're seeing a lot of growth, and we're hoping to translate that into more qualitative data as soon as we can.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. But it's, as you said, it's good to see that the usage stats also back up also the faculty, have adapted, these kind of tools, and they are very interesting, and they understand also the what value it brings. So and we're gonna have really focus also on learning analytics also in the coming months. Really a hot topic we need to tackle. Maybe a last question for you is what some educators might feel that create diverse interactive questions is more kind of time consuming than writing just MCQs. So what advice resources, what support does the University of Edinburgh provide to help faculty efficiently design and integrate these rich activities into the curriculum? I know you mentioned a lot of workshops, but do you have maybe some other ideas or tips?
Absolutely. So I think I've hopefully said several times throughout that, like the most important thing in our department is clarity and consistency. That's what we try to emphasize for all of our platforms and all of our learning technology generally. And we do a lot of work with templating. So for Wooclap, highlighting the institutional template options is a key point for us. And then looking at options for things like peer learning, that can be really helpful. On a more theoretical basis, we encourage people to keep in mind that things like MCQs and rote memorization aren't as demonstrative of real understanding as some other types of learning. So we want to be really interrogating the balance between the time commitment, the very valid time commitment it might require to craft meaningful and purposeful material versus how much harder we might have to work in the long term if we aren't kind of pushing as an institution to find ways to make this happen. So we do offer basically like we take bespoke requests. So we're always looking at help calls from people across our institution if they want us to help them design resources. We kind of try to leave options open for things like drop-in sessions. We try to basically give people as many options as possible and then see what works for people. So it's a balance. And also sometimes there may be times when the MCQs that people are using are perfectly acceptable and helpful. It's classic for a reason. But as we've been talking about a little bit, even varying the way that we use existing multiple choice questions can really move the needle. So for example, team mode and so on can ensure a level of engagement and discussion, even when using or reusing multiple choice questions. So something that's a good starting place for us is that even eliminating multiple choice questions altogether is not always the point. Creating totally new materials is not always the point. It can be so helpful just to implement existing questions and materials in a slightly different way that opens things up to different learning styles. So we do have our training sessions. We are currently developing a new suite of workshops that moves away from technical training and towards that more pedagogical bent of things and is a design-based framework. But we're still seeing where that goes. So that's sort of next steps for us as we move forward.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Robyn, again for this input. Just to bring this all together, you mentioned we know that moving beyond the MCQ, as you said, is essential for this, higher order thinking and addressing various learning styles as we stated here. And one of the common challenges, are also, finding, the time to create those diverse questions. So, as you said, just reusing some learning activities and, sharing also those materials, between ourselves. That's also a great way to do it. Generating also fresh ideas for activities. These are things that also take a lot of time. So just for this last part of this of the webinar, we also wanted to tackle the topic of artificial intelligence, also because it's also one of those challenges that you also pointed out at the very beginning of the session here. We also wanted to address this topic here because this technology can support specific tasks to help teachers in content creation and facilitating also interaction in class. So just to bring up to this last little part, and also this is precisely what we've been working on for the past few years, where we've been developing those AI functionalities to enable more effective learning and make it easier to get started also with Wooclap for all kind of users. And we're not going to we don't have the time here, but just briefly quickly going over those AI functionalities. We have an AI module that teachers can use and where they can import their own teaching material, and then that AI module would just generate a set of different question types based on the uploaded educational resource, and this will help also then the teacher first to facilitate in creating those interactive questions, so save a lot of time for him, and also help him also in diversifying those interactive questions. Another thing also that we recently also launched is actually those AI agents, which you can see them as being some AI functionalities that could do specific tasks within those kind of interactive questions. So we have the image enabler here, which help the teacher in saving some prep time by auto labeling those images. The answer organizer that can automatically group those learners' answers by theme. So that's very helpful. So when you want to do some collaborative learning activities within with Wooclap and within your course. You have the summarizer here, which again synthesizes the learner answers when you have hundreds of 50 or hundreds open of answers from your students. It can be kind of hard as well, like to pick up all the different answers from your students, and trying to understand also the trend and double checking if they've correctly understand what you just talked what you talked about. So you have those different AI functionalities that also help you in content creation, and also facilitating also your course. And one thing that I wanted to show you, so this is a little video that a member of the product team actually just created, because that's another AI functionality that we are looking at, which is specifically addresses today's topic. And having this an AI agent here, an AI functionality, which will literally here, as you can see, I'm just going to do it again here. It helps the teacher from just a topic, or maybe that could be also maybe from the learning objective that the teacher wants to address. The AI would then suggest a bunch of different question types that they can use, and again to facilitate and save him a lot of time. So we can focus on more on more important things. Another thing also that we wanted to talk about is the integration that we have within the LMS. So we're going to, I noticed that, yes, Johan, you wanted to see how it looks like within Blackboard. So it's also the LMS of the University of Edinburgh. So I'm just going to switch here. So we can also show you how Wooclap can be used within all of the LMSs. So teachers can use the tool within their own virtual learning environment. So that's actually our main, Blackboard, environment here. So I'm just gonna, if you're familiar with Blackboard, so here we've just created a course that we looked at. So and then it's pretty much similar to what your kind of LMSs as well here. But you just need to click on this little plus button to create then a little learning module that I just created here. I'm just going to, for the sake of this webinar, I'm just going to click on it. And once you created your learning module, of course, you can then just click on this little plus button and create. And here you have different ways to create, to design some content here. One of them is teaching tools with LTI connection. You just click on it, and then you type in wooclap.com. And then, as you can see here, you have a new activity which has been created with Wooclap. And I'm going to show you how it works here. So once you configured Wooclap within the LMS, then you have the entire interface within Blackboard, and with all the different functionalities that we talked about also briefly, with all the different interactive questions that you can use to diversify your quizzes, to diversify also your activities and your courses, and to tackle to address some of those learning styles that we mentioned about, and you can use the two different kind of sessions. So synchronously, if it's important for you to have all your content, all your courses within your learning environment, and then in class you have your Wooclap event ready to go with all your questions ready to go, and then you can just display as I did the connection of the event, so you can then so your students can then just log into that event here. Or you can also use the self-paced session. And I created here just to show you, but it's literally the same thing here. So it's literally the same interface. So you can create your asynchronous practice tests if you want to, your asynchronous quizzes with all the different question types here. As Robyn mentioned, also the importance here of reusing also some questions, some interactive activities that you used to help you also diversify your activities and save also a lot of time here. You can add instructions if you like. And once this is done, once you've created all of your different questions, you just hit save, you publish it, and then you just share. You click on share button, and these are the links that you can share also with your students, so they can then run those asynchronous questionnaire on Blackboard if they want to. One important thing as well is when you use Wooclap also within the LMS, within Blackboard here, you have the possibility to synchronize also the results from your students, and then those results will be synchronized within the student's gradebook. You can also, if the attendance is also activated, and Robyn, you mentioned it also at the beginning of the session that some teachers actually use it also to keep track of students' attendance. Once this is done, then you can also synchronize the attendance rate. So here, when the attendance feature is activated, students are being prompted to sign in with their own credentials, and then this way, the teacher will have an attendance list, and so we will be able to keep track of the students if they have attended or not the course. To go back to your question, Johan, about the roster system, this is something that we are looking at the moment, but it's not being implemented. So the way that students would verify kind of their identity is just by logging into Wooclap. And then the teachers can also, if they want to, they can also provide that with a participation grade. So that means that the student will receive, a participation score, regardless of, whether they answered correctly or not. It's purely based on participation. And again, the teacher can then synchronize then those participation and those scores within the student's gradebook.